Let me start, of course, by acknowledging that we're here on Ghana land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Recognise that this land was never ceded. It's a real treat to have our first term 2 lunchtime talk here in our own gallery today. We normally do these talks in partnership with UNSA and we use the Jeffrey Smart building, which is fabulous too. But it was unavailable today, and with the beautiful 60s ceramic exhibition as a backdrop for what is a series of talks we're doing over the next few weeks focused on ceramic practice, we thought it'd be great to use the exhibition as a bit of a backdrop, to the chagrin of our exhibitions team who are in the middle of installing them. So I want to thank them for compromising around the need to do this, and thank all of you for coming along. We have 3 very special guest speakers who will work in a conversational way but also present some things. Current head of our studio, Stephanie James-Manttan, and former heads of our ceramic studio, Phil Hart and Bronwyn Kemp, and it's great to have Bron back in Adelaide. I'm going to leave it there and get out of the way and hand over to
me.
Take right. Yes.
We're going in chronological order, Brian.
No, of course.
I don't have a lot of stuff of my own work on here, but I just really, in this forum, because I'm talking on Thursday at UniS tomorrow, so lunchtime UniSA, really about my own work and my own history in ceramics, but I just have this very quickly, just sort of the beginnings to show that I was going to, change of order. This is the piece that's in the show, in the middle here, in the next gallery. We've just discovered there's a missing section. What are we going to do? We might replace it with another piece, yeah? So Jan Twinroll has a crazy piece of mine. We'll try and find that soon. Jan's got a piece of everyone. Because before I came into the job at the JamFactory, which was then at Payne Road, which was the fantastic old building, which was the JamFactory, and my first image is not there. There it is. That was my first image. There's Pete before his hair changed colour. So we were like, there was a ceramics workshop at the JamFactory before. I think Alison might have been there for a little while. At what was just the building, and they didn't really build too much infrastructure. I think maybe just one kiln.
No, there were at least 2 electric kilns and a kiln we built ourselves up there.
Yeah. So then along came the reinvention of the workshop, which was handed to Jeff Mitchum. So we started this workshop, and Pete was employed to do all the building, really. You did kind of all the carpentry work, didn't you?
Some budget.
Yeah. So this was the crew that started, the new ceramics workshop at the JamFactory. And so Chris Headley, who's an Englishman, who was absolutely brilliant mould maker and vanished into the wilds of Victoria now, I think, and Lorraine Lee, and Nikki, who was also, Nikki and Lorraine had both been working in, studying in Tasmania, so they just ended up in the studio, sort of like renting space or in exchange for cleaning or for whatever. While the rest of us built the group together, we sort of built the first idea of how a training workshop should run and whether we should run a production line and whether the production line should make money and generate some profit back into the workshop. So there's, right at the end, is when I then became the head of the workshop some years later. Joe and Phil were my last trainees, and Mel was there at the time. There were a lot of other people there at the time, and a lot of other people, but I wanted to show that gorgeous photo, and you guys know. But also because even though we were making everybody, the way the structure was in those days was that the trainees and myself, we made a production line which was sold through the JamFactory. And so I designed the production lines, and then their trainees were encouraged to sort of spin off into their own design work or their own pot making. And they were certainly encouraged to then down tools at 4 o'clock. Did that ever happen, Phil? No. Down tools and make art, make your own work from 4 o'clock on. So sometimes that would be forever, wouldn't it? Like, 11 o'clock at night. So you try and spend more time on your own work than you spent on the production, because there was always that ambivalence about that. I think that was really the beginning of that ambivalence between where ceramic art is sculpture and where it's pot making, and those two histories started to kind of move together. And certainly at the time, we're at the tail end of the 70s, when the big art craft debate was raging, through sort of art history theory degrees. So it was a tough time, I think, for a lot of people, because we had nearly all been in art school training programs where ceramics was separate, and maybe it was called pottery even. And then coming into this world, which was sort of the late 70s, early 80s, where we were all kind of dabbling in sculpture. I was certainly dabbling in sculpture a lot, and I'm one of those people that had a hard time deciding whatever I'm going to do on any particular day, because I really love sculpture and I follow sculpture. I'm really interested in architecture. I'm really interested in painting. So all of those things were influencing what I was doing with ceramic, and I wanted my ceramic to be in that broader art world all the time, even if it was a coffee cup. I wanted the coffee cup still to be in that broader art world in some way. So I felt my role was really to encourage that art practice in the people that I was saying, but at the beginning of the day, you need to remember, on Phil's first week, I said to him, I can remember the first day, I said, okay, Phil, just make 100 cups, will you? Like this. So I threw the cup and then just handed it over and gave it to him, and he just looked at me with terror.
I've never got over it.
So these are just a few shots. We had Steve Davies, who was in the glass workshop at the time, and then he said, I hate this, too much discipline, I'm going to go over. He just started visiting and eventually took over a spot. And there's Steph Livesey, who came and did some contract throwing. She used to throw for Steve Bowers, I don't know. She certainly threw for Steve Bowers for a long time, and always irritates the hell out of me when I go to shows, like, even Pip Drysdale's a good example, that the person that makes the work is not acknowledged in the catalogue or in the public in any way. And that's very much true of quite a few people that make ceramic work now. And I thought Steph definitely got a raw deal there, because I'd never seen her name associated, with those fantastic teapots that Stephen Bowers makes, blah, blah, blah. She's an amazing thrower, and she sort of just vanished. There you go, Mel. But what I love about this image is actually the number of pots that are on the shelf. Look at that. I think this is Lincoln's area, wasn't it? So he came and he figured out really early. His dad had a really serious car accident, and the family he had a number of younger siblings, and the family became kind of dependent on his income. So in sort of the first couple of months he was there with us, he was working for himself, and then all of a sudden he was supporting his family. And so we sort of sat around going, how do you make a lot of money in this game? And he immediately went out and his work was already selling very well, but he's making really quite small amounts of it. So he hired, he hired Leo for his thrower. So Leo used to come into the studio and just sit there for a day and throw like thousands of pots. He's an amazing thrower.
Oh, and the fact is I've never seen a man pack a kiln. Like, he would use every cubic centimetre of a kiln.
Yeah, and so he threw for Lincoln, and Lincoln just slip-trailed these coloured slips. Smiley faces. So we had this session one day where we sat down and analysed how you could make money from making pots, and there was a list of things that had to be on the pot. So it had to have a finger mark, be not looking too slick, because we're talking about the 80s, have colour, and be cheerful in some way. So a smiley face was big. So when Steve Davies came, he took the formula just as a joke and said, okay, I want to go to Japan, I'm going to make $5,000 worth of of pots that are going to sell immediately. So he sat down, did it. It looked a bit like Lincoln's, quite a lot like it actually, didn't it? And then stuck them in his car, drove across the Hay Plain and stopped at every little shop on the way and sold it. By the time he got back to Sydney, he had $5,000, which at the time was quite a lot of money. Yeah, and then he went to Japan. Oh, there's Mel again. That was our big top loader. But what was interesting to me in that is just the quantity of work that we pumped out, a lot. And I think that's, I just had to put that in because that was, I did the graphic for that. I think Mark Thompson used to come into the studio quite a lot and say, oh, I've got, this needs doing, do it. He'd just throw it at you. And you think, oh, that's not my thing, but I stuck it in because in a way, the graphic on the cake was a lot like the pots we were making at the time, I think. So this was one of our main productions, was the green, which we all loved, and we loved the glaze. I loved the glaze. And couldn't sell it, could we? Nobody wanted it. It was definitely out of fashion. But we did do at the same time, we did purple and blue. What else did we do, Phil? We had purple and blue, the same sorts of designs, but with purple slip, blue slip, and coloured spots. I can't remember the others, but there are a few around. And then this was my line that I made for the workshop, my production line for the workshop, which was a sort of white, shiny glaze with blue decoration. So I started this. I've got a bit of a blue and white habit too, like Jerry Wedd has, this blue and white habit. It's really hard to shake, isn't it? Because it's so beautiful. So that was my production. And then in the middle of that, there were lots of exhibitions as well. And so I did this in '86 with the combination of just saying that this is the inside of the chook shed, and outside the chook shed there was a chook yard with a couple of chooks, which I think belonged to Ian Mowbray and Vicky, the late Vicky, his partner, who were both glassies at the time. So the JamFactory environment was pretty fantastic to work in. I look back and I just think at some images of people. Everybody looked pretty happy. I was just talking to Joe about that last night, how pleasurable it was to be engaged in really hard work, lots of pressure from the top saying make more money, because you're living off of government money, you're living off of grants, so just keep doing it. And that sort of sense of once you generated your production work, you were liberated totally to do whatever you liked. And certainly I encouraged that. So I think people were kind of perhaps a little bit shocked by some of the work that I did. So I moved off into other mediums too. And so on Thursday I'll talk about that. But I've put this up because this was in the JamFactory crafting show that wandered around Australia a few years ago. And it's a really particular favourite piece of mine. Look, I don't know this is recent stuff. So this is just work that I'm making now. So you can see I'm still inlaying. I've got this sort of bit of a mad inlay thing going on because it's the drawing aspect of it. So I'm really probably I have periods of time where I'm still making drawings or paintings too. I'm not always making clay stuff. And I'm still teaching, so I've just been teaching again. I teach at the National Art School in Sydney, where I also studied before I came to South Australia. So I don't know what's there. Oh, this is Phil.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Shall I keep going?
Just a quick look.
All right, here we go. Thanks, Bron. Good on you. All right, I'm going to run through these. I thought it's kind of like, what do they call it? An exquisite corpse, where you get get a drawing and you one person draws the head and then and so you get three people and we're going to create a monster kind of thing. Is that it?
It is now.
You're a tough audience. I thought that would be a really good intro joke. But anyway, it didn't really come off. Where are the surrealists? Andre Breton. So this is, I'd like to kind of talk about, it's sort of unfashionable maybe to cite your mentors and your teachers. I think people like sort of creativity to be like this sort of thing that's happened, out of a vacuum, and it's, but really it all comes from kind of people that have had input into what you're thinking about and what you're trying to do and stuff. So I had great lecturers at art school, Ben Kipradakis and Bruce Nuske and John Coulter and a bunch of other people who were just fantastic. And strangely, on the strength of some work that I made for my grad show, Bronwyn accepted me as a trainee in 1984. No, it wasn't. It was 86. 87, 86. Anyway, it was a long time ago. And I was lucky enough to work at this place, which was the old Mum's Own Jams and Sauces building, I think it was originally called, which was vast and had incredible spaces to work in. Interestingly, what happened was a bunch of us, after my tenure there with Joe Crawford, we moved into this building, which sort of it was like an homage to the JamFactory, and we called it Jamboree because it was actually an old scout hall in Welland, and we all kind of made pots in this building for over a decade. It operated, along with a whole lot of other people, and I thought what would have been really good was just to sit and name all these people that I've worked with for the years who have all made incredible things, and worked with people like Lisa Farron and Kirsten and Quaylo, and there's too many to mention. So but basically Peter Johnson, Joe Crawford, Jerry Wedd and myself moved into this place, and these are our old cars. And
Is that your car?
I had the Combi, which was actually my brother's that I drove around because he was overseas, and that's Joe's beautiful HR, I think, maybe. Anyway, there we are, looking a whole lot younger. Joe Crawford again, looking terrific, and Peter Johnson and myself being just prats, which we used to do a lot of. In front of a tarpa cloth, which was fantastic kind of wallpaper that was one of Jerry's. And it was a really vibrant, incredible studio. And this is this thing of like, what do you do after the JamFactory? That sort of nurturing security of having a studio that's, all of a sudden you've got to go out and do it for yourself. And so this was great because we all had very similar kind of idea about the ethos, about the kind of practices that we wanted to have, which, as Bronwyn was talking about, like pots weren't enough. It's sort of like we all made kind of weird stuff, like sculpture and objects and strange things, but also, as a basis for our income, produced kind of weird production lines. And so this is what I don't know. We didn't really talk about what we were going to talk about. So in this talk, so I'm just going to talk about me because I know quite a lot about that subject. So anyway, this is classic Jamboree. No heating, just silicosis everywhere, and trying to make sparkly things that come out of the kiln, and you go, what's that all about? But it was great times, weird production ranges, and before digital photography, when you got a 36 roll of slide film, it cost you an arm and a leg, and then you took all these bad photos yourself, you went and got them developed, you got 2 images that were kind of usable. This is how things used to operate. So earthenware, slip decorated, colourful, kind of weird sort of things, and this is just, it's like history, early 90s. Weird kind of decorative gilded objects, strange. And I used to do a bunch of, so strange things like this. There's no digital technology in this. It's, a car stereo and a wind-up alarm clock and a light. It was a home entertainment system. So I entered, there was this Inglewood Award that was like a really kind of fancy ceramic award that I was always trying to win. It came around every 3 years. I think they ran about 4 of them, and then the company folded up, and I carted this thing around with. I made it for one of the awards, never won it, and carted this thing around with me for years, changing houses and stuff, and of course it was pretty heavy, it was quite big, and just end up smashing it to pieces one day and throwing it into a skip. So I kind of like that image. More of the same, just spots and dots and stripes. Ceramics, it's all been done before. Why bother trying to do anything else? Like no other material, what we do is so informed by history, by the history of clay, by the history of clay work. You cannot escape it. It's been done for 10,000 plus years, So why try and do anything different? You know, everybody, it's all been done. All you can do is just reinterpret it and enjoy doing it. And so that's kind of what I do, I think, I guess, you know, just sort of fiddle about and kind of make things. And then you open some history book. Jerry Wedd's got that great quote about walking around with the history of ceramics in his head, and I think that's the same for nearly every potter or clay worker. I got really creative with this one and used some, you know, vegetables and stuff. Smarties, you know. Yeah. Why go and see Grant Hancock when you can? Yeah, no. You know, if you want good slides, you've got to pay for them. You know, so that's why these images are kind of weird. When I was running the studio here, which was you know, it was a great experience, and I was very lucky to be able to do it. And we tried to do the same kind of model. I guess we made a production range and we took on various projects. And this was something that an organisation called Thylacine Design, they actually designed the project, but we made all the tiles that were wet. We got them from Bennett's and we hand carved them. Steph remembers it well. I lost like years of sleep. I aged physically during the course of the project. And the tilers came and put it all together and it was incredible.
It was a stinking hot day, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it's all got like carving through it. It's up in Whitmore Square, so you can go and have a look at it. It's, you know, got a few chips and nicks out of it, but it's still there and looks pretty good. You know, I guess one of the things about working at the Jam was, you know, this thing of public art projects and scaling your work up and doing things. So this was another one that I kind of did posts, or was it part of that? I can't even remember. But it was working with kids, which are always great because kids are just, you know, unreal and good fun. And it's a Black Forest Primary School, so if you ever drive down South Road, you know, see if you can have a quick look before you run into the back of the truck that's in front of you or whatever. But it's still there. It's been there for 15 years, I think, and is still kind of unmolested and, you know... Untagged. Yeah, it was great. And we did one drawing from each year level and then scaled it up and got all the kids to, you know, carve it all out and scratch it and then load it up and cart it and bread things back to, you know, the kiln and then cart it all back. It's like, you know, yeah. And I love that about ceramics. I think Petrus Spronk once said, or read somewhere, that potters are basically, like, they do other things. They're not actually potters. He was talking about, like, Cypriot, like, olive farmers and olive growers or goat herders that, you know, do that in summer and then they go back and make pots during the winter. And I've always thought that that's, like, a really good idea, that we're actually all kind of doing something else. In my case, I used to be able to support myself from making work and selling it, but these days I just look after my wife, who has a proper real job, you know, and I'm being flippant about it, but, you know, it is a partnership and somebody has to do the domestics. I like doing the domestics. It takes up a lot of time, so I do that, and I make pots in the interim, and it's it works. This is in Norwood. It's another public art job, James Coke Park. So these things kind of, you know, roll across your table from time to time, and, you know, you go, oh yeah, okay, you know, and then you go, oh well, that's okay, you know, a bit of history. Bronwyn was talking about inlaying. So Bruce Nusky, when I was at art school, you know, and Angela Valamanesh as well, who did a lot of inlaid work, and Narikomi, Nariagi, that sort of stuff. So, you know, Bronwyn obviously was the queen of inlay, and so it was an area of interest. And slip trailing, and these are just pots with a whole lot of kind of writing about pots on them. I love that thing of reading about, you know, like pottery is a kind of serious craft form or art form, you know, it fills the gap between sculpture and painting, is it, or something like that, somebody said. Anyway, you know, so, you know, yeah, you just make things and keep doing more production. Wood firing, which I dabbled with Neville Assad, who was a fantastic predecessor, my immediate predecessor, studio head, who brought a kind of incredible sense of energy and life to the studio. Yeah, and we got together and did a couple of sort of selected wood firings, and with Melly Stock as well, who has her own wood kiln, and that was kind of interesting. You know, I've always dabbled a lot. I mix around, use a lot of different techniques, you know, because I just find it all kind of so interesting, and you sort of look at things and you go, oh, I wouldn't mind giving that a go. And I sometimes wonder if it looks like a whole lot of different people have made my work, or whether there is a sort of thread running through it all, but I can't see it. I love working kids, you know, stuff. It's great. These things, you know, you've seen them. Well, you can see them in the, you know, just occupational therapy. You know, it sort of sounds exotic being a self-employed, you know, craftsperson, but really it's a whole lot of just loneliness sitting in your shed, just you know, painting weird things on pots and going, well, you know, I wonder where this is going to end up. But, you know, I think ultimately, you know, that's sort of what I like. I just like the thought that one day, maybe in the future, maybe Bron and I were talking earlier about buying Song Dynasty pots that, you know, have lain on the bottom of the sea. So, you know, somebody might actually, like, in the future, like, pick up something that I made and go, you know, that's really good. I really like it.
Phil, you've got to get Glenn Barclay to write a review.
That's right.
This is exactly what he does. It's this sort of lifts bits of history and puts them together. Nobody notices because nobody studies history.
No, that's right. I'm always knocking on the wrong doors. I think that's my problem. Yeah, more of this, you know, more of this. Like back to the inlay, you know, porcelain things, and yeah, like I say, there's always just sort of kind of so much to learn. That one was about a midlife crisis that I was having. I thought I was having a midlife crisis. You know, no, that sort of domestic-y skulls are great because yeah, all that sort of stuff. But maybe no, it wasn't a midlife crisis.
I love to see that the teapot lid knob has survived from the 80s. It's like everybody.
It's there, yeah. Well, it was like cups completely disappeared. There was so many beakers in the shop for such a long time, and then the handles come back, which is great. Hart hand, which is that Bernal Leach thing. This was a collaboration I did with a woman, Penny, I can't remember her name, who was an embroiderer who did the great bits in the middle. Another collaboration with a woman called Hamda Mustafa, who was a henna artist. You know, it's that great thing of handcrafts and the way you can kind of incorporate them into the ceramic process. We had a little show out here in the atrium of these pieces, actually. You know, gold, you know, be careful, it's dangerous. You'll end up being addicted to it and you won't be able to, you know, like, you have to put it on everything. And then you've got to go, you wean yourself off it, you know. It's, yeah, porcelain, wood-fired, yeah, you know, you get the kind of idea. Oh, this was great. You know, that thing of the search for. Sorry about the terrible image. This guy, I think he's ranked, you know, like the top 10 pro surfers in the world. Colo Antino. Oh, sorry, they changed his check. We cut it out because it was said 20,000, and they changed it 30,000. You know, people come to you and they go, "Can you make a trophy that's sort of like about our sponsor?" That's sort of like, and you go, yeah, I'll do that. And then afterwards you go, geez, I wish I hadn't have done that. But anyway, you know, yeah, the things you do for money, you know, you get it. Yeah, these are the kind of things that are in this show behind. Terracotta, you gotta love it. More pots about pots. Sign your work. It's always good to. I don't know, I just think this is a funny story. So the last conference we had here, the ceramics conference, there's always that great thing of you have these role models, these people that you want to see work, and you know, and then you go to a conference and you watch them and it's just kind of boring, and they just like so dull. Everything happens so slowly. So I did this kind of performance thing, which was just, you know, being a bit of a prat, and yeah, you know, and
yeah, that was a real show off.
Yeah. But it sort of came out okay. It was like a screen, you know, a stencil thing of burned leech.
It was very impressive though.
I had this great idea: tattoos for buildings, like big tile tattoos for buildings. You know, that was going to be my. These are in a box somewhere at home. You know, being a prat again. Oh, there you go, Steph. You're up.
Right. I wouldn't say lucky last, but no, you would have to. Unfortunately, I'm going to be nowhere near as exciting as what these previous two people Yeah, I don't know whether it's going to mess up the microphone, but anyway, sorry, Connor, that it's going to happen because I've got a sore neck now. Yeah, so anyway, so I thought I'd just throw this image in. This was me at my first year at the JamFactory. Yeah, so I'm not going to talk mainly about, not necessarily myself, because that's the last thing I want to speak about. I'm probably going to speak a little bit more about how the JamFactory has actually influenced me in my practice, but also how I've actually had to diversify since I've been in a studio in this ever-changing ceramic climate. So anyway, I thought I'd just throw that one in. That was me trying to throw a bowl. I was pretty shit, but I eventually got better. Anyway, I thought I'd just instill, just to say, what Phil actually did for me. I came in predominantly as a sculptor.
Yeah.
And I did, and all of a sudden I'd see Phil make these impressive, big, beautiful porcelain forms and vessels and things like that. And I thought, while I'm here, I should give it a go. And Phil was instrumental in the way that I developed my career. Like, instead of actually making, sculptural, non-functional pieces, I diversified in making, wheel throwing, semi-functional pieces, or functional, whatever way you want to interpret them. But anyway, so and also that other big adage that I remember the first time I got there, I was with Erin, and we went up and spoke to Phil and said, "Oh, Phil, we want to make teapots." He says, "Well, as Bronwyn Kemp would say, go make 50 and come back and show me your last one."
Yeah.
So that was that kind of discipline, which is, I think, really, really integral with ceramics. So that's what it's all about, and I'm sure everybody will agree with me. It's all about practice. And but anyway, so which way do I go? That one. Okay, so I thought I'd throw this one in.
When I had hair.
I know. This was Phil when I first met Phil. So anyway, so and him, working, crazily on those, like I said, these massive big porcelain pots with his inlaid. So anyway. I just want to also say, when I was working at the JamFactory, we did work on a lot of product, which I found quite, instrumental in the way that I move forward with my practice. Also, it's about the ergonomics and the methodologies behind, working on production ranges and things like that. I think it completely, and I seem to think we're losing that art in within our studio practices now, and that's why I'm trying to actually instill those with our trainings at JamFactory. But anyway, who choose to go down the production path, not necessarily with everybody, but Anyway, so Whitmore Square. This so sorry Phil. Snack.
There you go.
So I think this was it was another good project to work on while I was actually an associate. Working with Phil, the way we had to number all these, every tile was numbered, every tile had an entrance point and an exit point. So the flow went all the way. I think it was like a Gaudi thing, wasn't it? Like, was the way that Gaudi designed these tiles? There was something.
It represented the internal sand dunes. The cameleers walked across
the way that we actually designed the
right,
tiles
okay.
for the entrance.
Yeah.
So we had that sand flow.
Was there any profit margin?
No.
Oh, shitloads, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We were raking it in.
Well, what was interesting was there was actually a lot of design kind of flaws with the project that we end up having to kind of, solve on the job, and we never got the kind of credit that you get, anyway. Don't call me bitter and twisted.
I always call you bitter and twisted.
No. It was good.
Anyway, so this is just a little bit of a detailed shot, but it was really quite good. It was, I like it too. So anyway, I just want to actually also say, Phil, I call myself a control freak, but I really think, that obviously I got it from somebody, and I got it from Phil, because when we were an associate, Phil insisted that he had to do everything, but the only thing that I actually managed to do on this commission was make the little type, like those paper thin, little, what do you call it? Label things, and got to,
And we got decals made for them.
That's right. So that was hilarious. But that was a great, again, another little project, in design as well.
Great. And we all threw them. And that was
No, well, I didn't. Anyway, so what else? when I was at the JamFactory, oh, actually, just so everybody knows, I came late into ceramics, so I didn't graduate until, and Bruce Nusky, who was my lecturer, hi Bruce, who actually convinced me to do ceramics. So, yeah, so I was going to say thank you, but maybe not. It's going to send me to an early grade. Anyway, I started late in ceramics, so I came to the associate program in 2007 after graduating in 2006 at Adelaide Central Adelaide College of the Arts. But I was a business IT system analyst, so I had a really, obviously I worked on some major government jobs with massive property, like $6.4 billion property portfolios and things like that. So I've got a very, very strong business work ethic. So anyway, I just thought I'd just let everybody know that, because it probably might help with the way that I lead into the way that I actually manage the studio now upstairs. But anyway, when I was at the, this was the work I started to do when I was an associate. I couldn't throw, so the only way that I felt that I could actually practice my throwing, but still make nice objects, is to actually mark them. So completely bastardised things that were pretty bastardised to start off with, so if that makes sense. Anyway, so these were all porcelain, and really loved the translucency of it. So yeah, I was introduced to porcelain in the second years of the associate program when Bronwyn came on board, and also I had an opportunity to go out to work with the Indigenous people out there for 2 weeks. And when I was there, I was actually mesmerised by the way that the women were weaving, that repetition of movement, and as you can tell, repetition plays a huge part in my practice. So anyway, this is what came about of it. I could see, the women with I would start off throwing with a ball of clay, and I would come up with these vessels, but I would actually watch these women weave these intricate little vessels. So anyway, this is my interpretation of it. And yeah, so again, this is just developing further through my making processes. So these are these iced tea beakers. These four glass, again, just exploration between, with the rims and, and porcelain as well, and trying to actually push it to its, utmost extremes. The detailed shot, some more work. And this is probably my more recent work. So this work is more informed by commemorating birds that I saw while I was in Florence, and the whole movement and the swarm, and how it's just probably more like a metaphor. Why can't we as humanity work the same way that these birds work the fact is, one brain cell is useless, but in thousands it is, it can do amazing things. So anyway, so that's basically what this works about. Some more. Anyway, so inlay. It's so funny because I thought I'd actually give my yeah, it's exactly. So yeah, but where Phil's and Bronwyn's was probably absolutely perfect. Mine were, because I was actually putting porcelain into a raku body, and so we had the shrinkages, so there was a lot more tension. So this pot's pretty famous because Dev Patel bought this from some documentary, so it's somewhere in and I hated this pot. It's so absolutely hated it. I thought it was the most disgusting thing ever made. But anyway, so yeah, you can see Robin Powell that the wrapping, and so it's getting that finite point between falling out as well. So
yeah. But Mitsu Shoji, he was the head of Sydney College for a long time. He inlays like lots of different coloured clays, but into different bodies. So there's cracking, there's lots of blurring and stuff like that. It's a really different look to the clean porcelain look that the Koreans do.
Yeah, so I thought I'd just give that a go. Anyway, so I did make teapots, Phil, so thank you for all that advice. So, not good teapots, I'm still making them anyway.
Show me the last one.
These are just some studio shots of my home studio, and my dogs, because they literally rule my life. But anyway, so to the JamFactory. As we're aware, there's been a massively huge insurgence of ceramics within the, nationally, internationally, and so when I became the head studio, I found it really difficult to find ways to actually make product. You know, ideally I would will throw everything because I love will throwing, but because if anybody can because will throwing is great, but getting somebody to actually come in and throw that work was becoming increasingly difficult because if you could throw, you don't want to be the JamFactory throwing pots, you're going to be in your home studio throwing pots for all these restaurants out there that, you know, that want all these beautiful handmade tableware now, and we can't compete as an organisation against these people that are making these, you know, these pots in most instances in their back garden. So, but anyway, but I did actually design this bump range. So before when I first came here, and I had the wonderful Susan Frost working for me at that time, and she helped me develop these beautiful colour tones. So then we decided, okay, well, you know, we can't. We're designing these wheel throwing ranges. We thought, well, we need to actually kind of diversify, and so we decided to actually start doing this casting. And I think that forms a major part of where we need to be moving forward with the studio, only because of that particular reason. Unless, you know, we can get everybody, you know, wheel throwing, becoming professional potters within, you know, 5 years. It's it's going to be a tool. So this is, you know, something that hopefully we'll fill a void. And it's about, you know, it's about, and it's not about, you know, making lots of little things that casting and making loads of them. And so, you know, there's the sustainability is there. It's all about, you know, making things that, you know, overtly embracing slip casting and not trying to hide it, you know. So anyway, so that's fun too. So anyway, we're working a lot with lights as well. So we find that's a pretty good area to be working in. So because of it's just, what is it kind of, it's just this kind of this, you know, insurgence of
Interesting
design. John's, yeah.
Interior design.
That sort of
Reinventing modernism.
yeah. So anyway, so yeah, so we're doing a lot of that now. So I'm just kind of mindful of the time, so it's 5:10. So I'll basically, you know, end it there anyway. So
I think so.